When 32 teams take to the pitch at the World Cup in Qatar, will they bring the people of those countries together or divide them? At least 7 of the 11 players who started for France in the final when they won the 2018 World Cup were Muslims whose parents came from African countries. But their experience of what it means to be French are very different from that of a white fan in the audience.
These tensions that are a result or a consequence of this colonial history then plays out on the football field between coaches, between players and fans.
Why does identity become so important when 11 players step onto a football pitch? And how are some players fighting back against systemic racism to embrace a more tolerant view of national identity? Karim Benzema is one of the world's top players. In 2011, the French-Algerian striker said that when he scored, fans saw him as French. But when he missed, he became Arab to the fans.
So when he plays for France, he's sort of torn between his identity of French people not being open to the idea that there are different kinds of French people, i.e. there can also be people of Arab descent or African descent. At the same time, he's representing the people of the suburbs or the projects, the banlieue, who always feel on the margins of French society. And so that's why there's this kind of conflict within a player like someone like Karim.
After France won the World Cup in 2018, the team went to the presidential palace to meet President Macron, a man whose idea of the French nation is hostile to Islam. Midfielder N'Golo Kante's mum was there in hijab. But if she had tried to enter a public school wearing her headscarf, she wouldn't have been allowed in because religious symbols are banned in French public schools. Some Muslim women even gave up playing soccer after the French Football Federation enforced a similar rule.
I mean, the problem for France is that while it clings to this idea of secularism, it's often a way for it to hide the fact that it discriminates very obviously against black people, against people of Arab descent. And so it becomes, by saying, oh, we don't count what race you are, we don't document that, I think it's just a way to prevent or postpone a conversation about French identity that is more than just a sort of an ideal, kind of an ideal white person.
France's colonial past also plays a big part in how identity is framed in soccer.
When colonialism ended in most of Africa after the Second World War, it meant that lots of countries got their freedom, but some countries, Algeria is a case in point here again, France was very reluctant to give them their freedom. They had to fight for it through armed struggle. Now, with time also, there are crises in these places because when there's violence, people leave. Well, where did these people go? They went to France. So you have these large populations of Algerians in many French cities living, trying to hold on to their own identities, trying to figure out how to live as second-class citizens, and trying to make it. These tensions that are a result or a consequence of this colonial history then plays out on the football field between coaches, between players and fans, and between the Football Association and the media and these players.
But the French government does not like to be confronted about its colonial past or the legacy of racism and Islamophobia it has produced.
France, its modern identity is organized around the idea of the Republic. And what it says is that it doesn't make distinctions between different kinds of people. We are all French, we're all equal. It's a cosmopolitan nation. The problem is, in reality, mostly that Frenchness applies to being white. Police brutality, housing discrimination, opportunity, practicing your religion. There are all kinds of prohibitions and things that prevent you from living a full life in France.
After the 2018 French World Cup win, Trevor Noah congratulated Africa, given the number of French players of African descent.
Africa won the World Cup! Africa won the World Cup!
The response? A French ambassador wrote to Noah, accusing him of denying the players' Frenchness and reinforcing the idea that French identity is linked to whiteness.
Like all of those players, if you trace their lineage, you're like, how did you guys become French? Like, how did your family start speaking French? Oh, okay, all right. When I read stories from Africa and when I watch what politicians say, especially in France, about African migrants, when they are unemployed, when they may commit a crime or when they are considered unsavory, it's the African immigrants. When their children go on to provide a World Cup victory for France, we should only refer to them as France.
That statement by the French ambassador is kind of laughable. I mean, anybody knows that that's this kind of thing that France hide behind, that it insists on this equality. But any person of color in France or any visitor of color to France will know that that's not true.
While France had players from the colonies in its leagues and national team for decades, England was doing the opposite. They mostly ignored black footballers until it became impossible. And despite being belatedly allowed to play, those black England players still face unimaginable levels of racism.
In the case of England in the Euros 2021, with the finals against Italy, that resulted in a penalty shootout, and the three players who missed were all three of them were black, and so then English fans, white English fans, sort of, went on social media and abused them. I think what that showed was football in that sense was ahead of the society.
When Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho and Bukayo Saka missed those penalties, they faced racist abuse online. At least 600 reports of online abuse toward black players in England were recorded after that tournament. After, Marcus Rashford, one of the three players who faced that racist abuse, felt the need to downplay it.
I feel like they just reacted to how they felt like, and whether it's because it was 3 black guys or 3 white guys, that's how they felt. I remember when Beckham was getting death threats and getting
he was one of them, yeah.
So it's like, it happens, but they just want you to win, like.
No, that's like.
Yeah, but
This is actor Daniel Kaluuya. He's interrupting Rashford to tell him, no, actually, the racism you faced was not okay, and actually, it was systemic.
That's why you get conflicted with supporting England. It just reminds you of being a kid in England. It reminds you all them times where you're out, everyone, and then someone says something. You're trying to get closer to the identity of being English, and then that happens.
So soccer can highlight unresolved colonial histories of European countries, but can it also offer an alternative, more equal and inclusive vision of what the nation could be?
It's difficult to say whether football could overcome the problem of Englishness. I mean, that's a lot of weight to place on football. Football is often like a backdrop, a space where these things play out. That's the best thing that football can do. I think the only way you could change English identity if people organize around it and kind of try to reinvent its symbols, make something else out. If people feel, English people, black, brown people feel that there's something to save about that identity, then they should do so.
And that's exactly what many of France's black players have tried to do. To use football to embrace French identity while fighting to redefine what Frenchness means at the same time. Because when they put on that blue jersey, they're representing a France that is as Arab, as African, and as Caribbean as it is white.